Okay.
No, those are pretty good, actually.
Good evening, everybody. So, noting the hour and the presence of a quorum, I hereby call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting online may do so on ActonTV's YouTube channel, which is found at the top of our agenda. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted online at ActonTV's website, which is actontv.org. So first and foremost, I do want to welcome our new committee members to the table, Glenn Cody and Lisa Adel. Welcome. Very happy to have you here. And we have as we've been looking at our agendas and as I've been talking with folks, including tonight, there are only 4 school committee meetings left this year. So we're definitely marching towards the end. I'm sure that our educators feel very similar, that we're just marching our way towards the end of the school year. We are going to start this evening with some recognition. So Peter and I are going to go up front and recognize some amazing students.
All right, so hello everyone. I'd like to invite some of our Music All-State students up. So if George and Joanie, you want to come up along with our students Alex and Elliot. So we're bringing Alex and Elliot up here because we want to recognize them. They were selected this year as members of the Massachusetts Music Educators Association All-State Performance, which runs band, chorus, and orchestra. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about the program, but this is an incredible accomplishment. In order to be selected for Massachusetts All-State, that means you are one of the top musicians in the state. And so really incredible honor. I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Alex to say a few words about that, and we'll say congratulations after.
Yeah. So I'm Alex, as Mr. just introduced. And first, before I talk about it, I just want to mention that 3 other people who got into All-State, who unfortunately couldn't be here, but definitely deserve to be mentioned, Oscar Lewis, Anna Lee, and Lauren Bartley. All of them also did amazing work, did a lot of hard work to get to this point. So just a bit about All-State. So MMEA, which is the organization that runs this, has a thing called the Senior District Festival. And so we're in the Eastern District, and you have to go through this entire audition process and get accepted into it to get in it, and you play the festival. That was back in January. I think around 20 of our students or something like that got into that, which is a pretty huge amount, especially from when I was a freshman, like a sophomore. So that was pretty amazing. And once you get through that entire process, if you score well enough on the Senior District audition, you get a recommendation for the All-State audition. And you have to go play another audition. And then if you do well enough in that audition, then you can get into All-State. So it's a lot of hurdles to get up to this point, but after all of that, your reward is to get to play at Symphony Hall in Boston, which is, pretty darn cool. And if you don't know, that's the home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Huge, amazing hall. It's great. It was really a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, I think the 2 of us are very proud of getting to that point. And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
All right. So,
I play the trumpet and
I play the trombone.
all right, so we have a couple certificates for you, and then we'll let some pictures happen and things like that. But this is the chair of the school committee, Adam Klein.
Congratulations. Thank you.
All right. I see. Oh, here we go. We have to smile for the camera. All right, next, I would like to invite Maggie McGuire and Peter Brown to come up, along with 3 of our students from Proscenium Circus, Evelyn Burke, Macy Sowers, and Sophia Margarant. So school committee members, a quick quiz. How many of you have been to a Proscenium Circus show before? All right, if you have not, you need to make it a goal within the next year. I think they're done for the season now, but.
We have one next week.
Oh, next week. You're in luck. So this is a good preview of that. I actually got to see Proscenium Circus when I was in my last district, because they came as part of the drama competition that actually we're highlighting tonight. And I was immediately just absolutely floored by the quality of productions that come out of all of the students at PC. This is a historic program here in Acton-Boxborough, long running, great tradition for our community, and I would highly encourage you to get out to the shows. This year, Proscenium Circus made it to the finals of the state drama competition, which is METG, I think, right? That's how it's pronounced. And it really is challenging to get there. I've been in high schools a long time, and it takes a lot of time, energy, work to get there. We also had several students during the process recognized. Who are not here with us tonight, but we had an award for excellence in acting to Fran Roma, excellence in practical effects to Joey Rink and Sadie Dupre, and excellence in props and design to Porthos Rabin Marquez and Nora Coe. So they're not here with us tonight, but we do have 3 amazing students with us here to join us and receive the award. So congratulations to all of you. Maggie, I'll let you say a few words before we do awards.
Thank you. I'm Maggie McGuire. I'm the program director for PC, and I'm so honored to represent our students. These are 3 of our student leaders, both on our festival show and in our program generally. But they represent a team of 40 students who started work last June, in many cases, for our March festival. The Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild runs a festival throughout the month of March. Over 115 schools compete throughout the month. We were lucky enough to be named winners at our first 2 rounds of competition to earn a place at state finals in the top 15 in the state. So it was a real honor. This is also a historic program for myself and Mr. Brown. And so to see our students perform at the John Hancock Hall, where both of us brought shows a certain number of years ago when we were in high school, and where the festival has held their finals for 90 years, was a really wonderful experience. And so we're very, very proud of our students and their work throughout March and throughout the year. And as Mr. Light said, feel free to swing to the auditorium next weekend. We end the year with our Spring Arts Fest, where we collaborate with the a cappella groups and round out the year. But our students have grown so much in my 4 years here, and really did an amazing job at state finals this year. So we're very, very proud of all of their work.
All right, so congratulations, and Chair Klein will give out some certificates, or a certificate.
There's too many.
Yeah. All right, and we are going to pose for the camera now. I will also give a shout out. Many of you might not know Peter Brown. Peter is the person behind the scenes for the district who makes sure all of the technology that you use works when you come to school committee meetings. So big thanks to Peter. All right, and the last person I want to bring up is Luke Kilfoyle, and I'm going to ask maybe Mr. Scanlon and Coach Waters, do you want to come up as well? We wanted to make this tricky for you. So I don't know if any of you saw this on a segment recently, but Luke was featured as a WBZ Player of the Week on a recent clip on television. And fantastic student athlete, amazing person. And we wanted to bring him in because it's such an honor to do that. Really representative of our entire lacrosse community here at AB, which again runs deep and is incredibly important to the community. So we wanted to bring Luke in, let him tell you a little bit about the lacrosse program and his experience, and just say congratulations to you for everything you've done, captain, goalie, he does it all. So fantastic. So I'll turn this over to you, Luke, and then we'll do a certificate at the end.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Light, for having me tonight. Yeah, like Mr. Light said, my name is Luke Kilfoyle. what's different about me is I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when I was 15 months old. Grew up in a family with athletics, and always wanted to be like my older brother. He really got me into the sport of lacrosse, and I got into the sport of lacrosse when I was about in second grade, and played all the way up to where I'm at now. And to be a part of this program of AB Lacrosse, it's really impactful and changed my life completely. The culture, the team, my teammates sitting next to me today. We pride ourselves in being great teammates and trying to better the community, and it's an honor to be a part of the program for sure.
All right. Oh yeah, we got to do the picture here. I will also say, actually, Coach Waters, just say for one quick second, he's the assistant lacrosse coach, but Coach Waters was also recently named as the next head football coach for our football team. So congratulations, Coach Waters. We are thrilled to have you in that role as well, and wishing you a great season next year.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck as you close out the season. Tournament, hopefully, long way. Good luck.
Okay, congratulations to everybody. Please don't feel like you need to stay for the rest of our meeting. We will not take offense. But we do have some more students who are here to speak with us this evening. So we have our two school committee student reps from the high school, Julia Shao and Diksha are here this evening. Why don't you guys come up, have a seat. There are 2 seats at the table, and we'd love to hear an update from you about what's happening at the high school. And just don't forget to push the button and get the red light on the microphone.
Hello everyone, I'm Diksha Mathre. I'm currently a junior at ABRHS, and welcome to our new committee members. Nice to see you here. I would like to start off by highlighting about the anti-hate and bias presentations at the high school. I thought that they were very impactful. Definitely a move that needed to be done, seeing events of hate in the school as a student. And I think it's definitely something that the high school and maybe even the middle school could get in the process of doing to address issues that happen at our school. I've talked to admin about the presentations, and we've been discussing how to get more students involved in the presentation so that students can really connect in this process. So I'm excited to see how that goes. So that's pretty much it. Thanks.
All right. Oh my God. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm also a junior. And just kind of going off of what Diksha said, I think it's really impactful if we can see students leading these discussions with other students, even beyond what admin and teachers can do and say. I feel like when it's peers speaking about our own community, it really has a greater impact on the students. Yeah, and then obviously we just saw band and PC get recognized, and so I just wanted to shout out that we had a kind of whole high school concert at Groton Hill for the music programs. We had all of the music students basically, so I was playing with the orchestra, and then band, all the choruses. So we had a big concert there. It was a great time as usual. So yeah, just anytime, this year, next year, future performances, it'd be great to see you guys here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for our student reps? All right, excellent. Thank you both very much. All right, on to public participation. So as per our school committee policy, members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. They must be recognized by the chair. And as a reminder, the committee does not typically respond to comments during public participation. Anybody here this evening wishing to make public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the superintendent's update. Peter.
All right, thanks, Adam. A couple of things. One, in the month of May, we have a few things going on. One is it is Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So we always send out some resources to families so that they can talk about that with their students. And there are different things that occur throughout the month in our schools so that students become aware. We also have Memorial Day, which is a really important holiday here in the U.S., where we are honoring the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. military. So another significant holiday coming up. District Management Group has started work on their strategic planning and reorganization process that they're working on. Right now, they are starting to conduct some one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders across the district, and we'll probably be doing that over the next couple of weeks. They're also thinking about how they can use that initial information to develop kind of a communication plan, an engagement plan with the rest of the community that will guide the following work. We also, just as a reminder, are accepting applications for membership on the steering committee through this Sunday, May 11th. And our first meeting of the steering committee is scheduled for May 27th. As you just heard from a couple of our student reps, the high school did their training for interrupting hate and bias recently with high school students, and we are actually working on that at the elementary schools right now as well. So by the end of this year, all students in our schools in grades 4 through 12 will have participated in an age-appropriate version of this training focused on recognizing and interrupting hate and bias messages in our schools. The guided conversations help students understand the impact of harmful language and actions, providing them with tools for speaking up against hate and encouraging respectful and inclusive discussions. Through the lessons, reflection, and scenario-based learning, students gain skills to foster safer and more welcoming school communities. Budget and finance update, we're going to be talking about a little bit more tonight, but we will be sending out some highlights of what you're going to hear in the presentation to members of the community. And then just a few things happening around the district. We had our 31st annual community service breakfast and day. That is for our seniors who are graduating this year, sponsored by the high school. So thank you so much to the high school. With limited staff and resources for this year's events, it was an amazing accomplishment to pull off. Thanks to all of those who stepped up and contributed with those events. And then also what was pretty cool was our girls swim and dive team was honored at Fenway Park right before one of the recent games. And that team has now won 3 of the last 4 state championships. So congratulations to that team, tremendous accomplishment. And then I will say a number of us here at the district office had an opportunity to go to the music concert the other night at Groton Hill. What an absolutely amazing show. If you have not been to one of the music department performances, please go. And I would say, for next year, mark your calendars for that event because it's a stunning venue and amazing musicians performing. So congratulations to everyone. I also will say we had a very successful event on April 30th at Leary Field. That was our Unified School Games Day, and that was our 6th opportunity to participate in the Unified Games. We had students from the high school, R.J. Gray, Blanchard, Conant, Gates, and McCarthy Town elementary schools all participating as athletes, supported by staff members and student volunteers. So thank you in particular to some of our staff, Faith Yager, Ann Dempsey, and Kathleen Knight for all of their hard work to make that day such a memorable event for our student athletes. And then the last one is a community service announcement that I want to give. I don't know if you know of this organization, but the Doli Atamian Campership program is a really important program in our community that provides scholarships to summer camp and activities and classes for students and children in Acton and Boxborough based on family income. So we will be sending that out as a reminder to our families so they know how to access some of those resources.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody have questions for Peter? All right. So we've gotten through all of the beginning of our meeting, and now we're into our guests and presentations. So I am happy to invite Principal Dean up to present an update from the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School. And Joanie, I'm happy to tell you that we're currently 8 minutes ahead of schedule, so you can have an extra 2 minutes.
2, okay, that works out mathematically, I get that. I'm gonna set my timer. All right, Peter, you told me how to use this.
On the side, where it's red, make it green,
Yep, okay,
and then
got
it
it.
should work.
Okay, thank you for having me tonight. I cannot compare to the students that you just saw, but I am happy to highlight what has been going on in the high school this year. You heard a little bit about this week, but I do want to just highlight our senior art show at Acton Village Works that opened tonight and will be open till May 21st. Beautiful pieces of art and artwork there. Peter and many others spoke about our concert on Tuesday night. If you were there for the finale, you saw 263 musicians all at once playing their instruments and singing. It was pretty magical. All right, so now I'll zoom out a bit and talk about this year. I'd like to highlight structures, curriculum and instruction, and community in the high school. So first, in terms of structures, we welcomed a new administration this year, 4 new assistant principals and a new athletic director. You just saw Jim Scanlon. Our 4 new assistant principals, 3 of them were from the school, so they'd been there for a long time. They're a really collaborative, cohesive group, and they support a lot of what the students and staff do behind the scenes. The assistant principals and counselors work really well to support our students in teams, and so very positive about that. Building access. At the beginning of this school year, we worked to monitor who was coming in and out of our building. So prior to this year, we had 30 entrances that were open throughout the school day for students and really others to go in and out of freely. We cut that down to 2 so that we really can know who is in our building. And so now we scan students' ID cards when they come in, and we feel much better about knowing who is there. Student supervision. With our open campus model in the high school, we really have had to think about increasing the management of the building, providing structures for students, and having more adults visible in the building. With reductions in our campus monitor positions, this year we asked teachers to do voluntary duties, and some of them were able to do that. Next year, and similarly in a budget situation where we're not able to hire, we actually are reducing campus monitors. We are going to need to have teachers do duties during the school year, once a cycle. And teachers are going to help be a presence for students. That'll be good for the students and teachers to interact, and yet it does take teachers valuable time away from what they're already working on so well, collaborating, working with students, and preparing for their classes. Attendance, this was a main focus of the year. You've heard about that across the district. I have a few stats here. In the high school, we have both period attendance and then we have daily attendance. It's a little different than the other schools. Very happy that we have a 42% decrease in class cuts this year, or skips. We instituted a new kind of tiered system. Students get orange slips when they miss a class, and what they have to do with that slip is go to their teacher and get it signed and talk to the teacher about why they were absent, and that has worked incredibly well. And then there's consistent tiered follow-up after that, including meetings, detentions, team meetings after they talk to the AP, and so we're really happy with that work. Daily attendance also has, the absenteeism rate has decreased in terms of chronic absenteeism, which is more than 10% of the school year, so 18 days out of 180. You'll see that we have 12.4% this year, still high, 13.1% last year. We are happy, though, that the percentages increase with grade level, so we are confident that our 9th and 10th grade work in terms of following up with quarter by quarter meetings, once a student passes 8 absences with families and students, have been working, and we talk about credit reduction and other structures and supports that we can put in place to help improve attendance, and we are happy that our students are in class more, and we think they're happier too. All right, our second topic is curriculum and instruction. So this is main work of our teachers, and it impacts students throughout the high school. You know that we're doing course releveling in the high school, and I just want to remind everyone of the goals of that work, and we have seen success in this work. And so the work's goal is to increase opportunities for advanced level courses for our students. And secondly, to provide broader range of learning and social environments for our students, so they're not grouped and segmented into classes. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide, but some tangential and supportive work to that are in the other boxes. So we are working on an open grade book this year in the third term, and actually today for the fourth term, we opened for 1 week the grade book for students and families. Next year, we're going to open it for the entire year so that students and families can see their grades throughout the school year. We've actually seen a shift to ownership in terms of students working with their teachers, and teachers have said they've noticed that students have been trying harder when they know that interim grade. Second, curriculum mapping. We've been working to create unit and course maps for the entire school that will support our course leveling work. And so that's some leadership team work that we think is going to be good for the school. Professional learning, we had an organizational structures committee working on looking at different structures, some things like house models, if you think of like Hogwarts, where you'd have like groups of students with a dean or an assistant principal, a ninth grade academy. What our teachers really liked when they went to look at other schools was a flex block in the schedule, a time in the schedule where students can get extra help and explore other activities. So that was a great experience to see other schools, and we're thinking about that flex block for the possibility of the following year. So I'm sure you'll hear more about that if we do want to get more input and consider that seriously. Next year, one goal of our professional learning is to really assist staff in developing their tools to support their students in the most heterogeneously grouped classes. So really the students that need the most support, and also those who need a little more challenge. I wanted to provide a link here for our course leveling plan. I don't know if I can click in this. That's a link, Peter. Can I click on that? It's okay if I can't. If you get a chance to click on that, you will see over time, please don't read all of the details, our plan year by year. And we had 20 courses, 5 different subjects and 4 grade levels to collapse or reduce our levels. This is the work this year, so we reduced those in the orange this year. Next year, we will be reducing, just keep on going, 2 more classes. If you scroll down, you'll see another math. So we just have 2 more classes next year, and then 1 each the following year. So we've done 16 of 20 classes so far, and we have 4 more to go. So that's a substantial amount of work that the high school has done. All right, we'll have to go back now. Okay. If you continue, you can see some of our stats that we're using to measure this work. So if I have to go forward. Our quarter 1 grades have remained pretty consistent throughout this work. We're very happy that they hover around 87, 88%. Our quarter 2 grades, which we also have stats on now at this point, are also right around that point. So throughout our course leveling work, we're happy to see that our grades are remaining consistent. This is a slide that I borrowed from Gabby Abrams, thank you. Over the past 2 years, we've increased our AP exam administration by 46%, and that's like hundreds of exams, and our pass rate has remained steady at 94%, and that's pretty impressive. Overall, we're pretty happy with our course leveling work. We think it's going to take another 3 to 5 years, not just with the remaining courses, but when you change your curriculum, it takes 3 to 5 years in any course to kind of work out everything that you need to make it what you want. Students have said in both end-of-year surveys and in feedback in school council that they really enjoy being in classes with a wider range of students, and teachers are happy with the successes and the opportunities that students have been afforded, and they really want to delve into working on supporting all of their students in the classes, especially the ones that need support and the ones who need more stretch and challenge. And that's what we're going to do next year with our professional learning. The third topic is community. This is a picture of our class of 2025, soon to graduate on June 6th. You can join us on Leary Field. Very proud of what they have done at the school and the community that they've helped build. A student came to school committee recently and shared her perspective of what's going on in the high school, and we think it is emblematic of a sense of what's going on. It feels that the school has made great strides towards prioritizing community as well as diversity, something that we hope that will hopefully continue with time. If I share just some specific events that we're pretty proud of, include student voice and community and spirit. One is our Student Spotlight series this year. Our ABRHS group, that's our Students for Equity and Justice, highlighted two groups, the MSA and the BSU, so the Muslim Student Association and the Black Student Union leaders on separate days, where they shared their stories of their time at AB, especially including their identity. And those are really well received and meaningful for our community. You've heard many people here today talk about our Interrupting Hate and Bias assemblies. We had 16 assemblies in one day, and they really went well with student input. We encouraged our students to really do their best to make our school what we want it to be, to stand up when we see things that are happening that are not quite right. We reiterated the interrupt, question, educate, and echo mantra in terms of when we see things that are not quite right, slurs, jokes, hateful and biased language. Again, as you heard earlier, we had our 31st annual Community Service Day for seniors recently. It's really special that this community values and embeds community service in what we do and what we foster for the students. You see the Senior Dress-Up Day picture here. We recently had a culminating airplane contest advisory in the gym where all the students came to the advisory, and our 6 winners from across the different areas of the building flew their airplanes, and one was the winner, and it was pretty exciting. We've had a lot of AP team competitions this year that have built spirit. We had our 2nd annual Flex Block in March where students chose different workshops to go to. We had over 50 workshops. A popular one is TUPPET, the Tufts University Prison Initiative program, where we hear from previously incarcerated individuals where they give advice and they tell their stories. There's other ones such as therapy animals, board games. The students have a lot of fun on that day. And I'll just end with this year we're excited to have again our 2nd annual senior clap out ceremony. There's a picture of it down there in the bottom right where the 9th through 11th graders line the sidewalk going up to the senior lot, and then our students on their last day of school in the 12th grade process up, and we all clap and cheer for them, and a band is there to play music. So that's kind of a fun event. That'll be on May 30th. So that is a brief overview of all that is happening in a very large, vibrant building. I will just make sure that I highlight all the work that the teachers and staff are doing, especially in limited fiscal times, to really support all of our students and work well together. I think students and staff are committed to making our community the best that it can be, and I believe it was a great year. So that is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Joanie. Appreciate it. Questions, comments from the committee? Anshin.
Hi, Joanie. Thank you. I think you might beat Jim. I think you might have beat Jim's record.
I don't think so. But it's okay. We're twice as large, so I'll take it.
So I know the course releveling is still in process because it takes years to shake out. The feedback I hear from the community, if there's any parent that will stop me at a grocery store, they are talking about they feel like their student is fall in between.
Yeah.
They either have to be forced to take a higher level class because they don't want to be in, they feel like when we remove AE, those students don't have a home anymore.
Yeah.
So that's my question. Do we have a plan to support them, or this is just a part of the process?
I think that we want to definitely support them. I'll point out that our most heterogeneously grouped class is, and this is pretty technical, but weighted at the 4.5 level, which is the old AE level. So the weight that the students are getting are similar. I think that once you start introducing another level, you start segregating the population then, and you start having this lower level that we really want to avoid, especially when we look at the data and the types of students that get segmented into that lowest level. At the same time, we do recognize that we need to work on making sure that we're providing supports for our students and then challenge and stretch for our students in those classes. But we have introduced some classes, not many, and I don't think it's probably developmentally and instructionally important in most subjects where there is an honors kind of option in some of those classes. But we do want to address those concerns, and I think we want to work individually with students, represent them well to college and support them, and give it 3 to 5 years so that we can see if this is working. Once we were to introduce more levels, I think we're going to go backwards on some of our goals in terms of broader learning environments and more advanced level opportunities, because when you get stuck in that lower level, it can take you 2 years to get up, and then you're basically out of time. So it is a important point and something we need to work on. I think that, when you are in the high school, it is hard to find a student that is not well supported and who teachers do not know individually and help them reach their potential. AB is a pretty special place in terms of that.
Thanks, Joanie. I'm kind of following along on what Jensen was thinking about. I had a really interesting conversation with a 9th grader where I heard kind of one of the first acknowledgements that the flexibility we're providing in being able to pick your level, pick your year, is having an impact. And so this is a 9th grader who took on everything hard, and discovered that maybe that wasn't the best choice, and is not going to do that next year, and said very specifically, I'm not worried about this because I know later on when I'm ready to take the AP classes, I can go back there, I can do that. And so that felt good, because I know we've heard these comments as well from a lot of families and from a lot of students that they're just struggling with, like, which level do I go to? And the other thing that I just wanted to share, I think I mentioned this on Budget Saturday as I was fuming on the topic of things that people often say about leveling, but I love to pull all the DESE data on like what our peer districts are doing. And before we changed this, we were actually way behind the top performing districts in access to advanced classes. And as soon as we made this change, it's a huge jump. So it's not just that we have more students taking APs and being successful, but that we are providing opportunities our students hadn't had before, and it's groups of kids who haven't been there. So I'm just excited about this, and I really appreciate the update. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll add a quick one. Since we're talking about course leveling, I think one thing that would be interesting to see at some point is if we have any data on students who've tried and realized that that wasn't the right fit for them.
Yeah.
Because I think that sending that message is really important, and I can tell you from personal experience that when it doesn't fit, there is, to your point, a supportive group of people who know every student and help them figure out the best place to be successful. So I think that's the other sort of the other side of the coin of I don't have a place to fit. Well, you do, and we want to support you in finding the right spot. And if you make a choice that's too hard, that it's okay to go and ask for the help. So not for now, but I would love as we get deeper into the leveling, we learn more about but what are the opportunities to make a change mid-year that says this isn't the right place for me.
I wish I had 20 more minutes to talk, but I think you'll find our override data is pretty incredible in terms of students who choose to override a recommendation and then do really well in the course. We also have a very flexible scheduling calendar in which students can switch classes, and our counseling and our advice from teachers is so wonderful, very late in the year without any penalty and with a lot of support. And yes, later.
Thank you. Any final comments? I'm going to go to Glenn and then Lisa.
All right, thank you. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on the strategies you implemented and used for addressing chronic absenteeism, and where you think how we can get that number down a little more. Did that number spiked post-2020 lockdowns, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you just say a little more about that?
Yeah, so it's been a two-pronged approach in the high school because everything is kind of calculated by class in the high school. We've been tracking attendance, and it's a lot of work for 1,650 students every day, daily attendance and class-by-class attendance. So we've been following up whenever a student skips a class the next day with a pass to then talk to a teacher, and there's been a real decrease there. There's a tiered system, so I could get into that, but then the next thing, if you miss 2, is lunch detentions, then conversations with your AP. No, conversations with the AP comes first, then lunch detention, and then fourthly, a team meeting. For chronic absenteeism, daily attendance, we have instituted after 8 absences per quarter, so there's 4 quarters in the year, there is follow-up and possible credit loss. On the 4th absence, we start a kind of tiered support in reaching out to the family with counselors and AP team meetings to follow up with the students. So it is pretty specific and kind of follows a tiered response system. We've seen good results. I know those numbers aren't high. Aren't as low as we want, but I would predict in future years, based on that work that's just really started this year and that we see lower numbers in the 9th and 10th grade. We've tightened our open campus. For 9th and 10th graders, they're not allowed off campus. You know, those structures are going to start to pay off in all those sorts of ways in multiple years. Yeah.
Lisa.
I thought the concept of the open grade book was really fascinating. Would you mind taking a minute just to tell me a little bit more about what went into that in terms of were teachers given more planning time, and how the teachers felt about it, and what that looked like for the students on their end when they're opening it up and they're looking at their grades? Thank you.
So that also could take a long time to talk about, but so I would say that many students and staff were very excited about it because students kind of want to know where they were at. Students were a little nervous that their parents may overreact to some bad grades. So we talked through communication around that with students, and we talked to parents a lot. And if you read my emails that I send home and talk about it a lot, it's like, have the student reach out to the teacher first, and that worked really well. And I think that teachers were pleasantly surprised. They said basically they heard nothing, or the things that they did hear were really polite, respectful questions from students. I think teachers were worried about more work, and I think it's over time they're doing a little bit more work at the beginning, but then at the end they don't have quite as much work. And because we planned it out in the fall to when it was going to happen in March and May this year, and because we've been talking about it this year for next year and what the process is going to look like, I do think that people feel prepared. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was wondering if they had time to make those adjustments to be able to plan for that. Thank you.
Tori, if you can make it quick.
I just want to pause to comment, how awesome is it when your students come in and say, we love that interrupting hate and bias training, and we can do this even more and take more ownership than our teachers and our administrators. Not that you're not doing an awesome job, but that shows how awesome a job.
They're better.
I'm amazed. Awesome.
Yep. Very impressive. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, thank you so much, Joanie. Thank you. All right, and we are moving on to new business. The one item of new business we have today is the first read of policy JQA, which is about financial assistance. I'll turn it over to Liz, and then maybe she'll turn it over to Andrew, just like that.
Sure, happy to introduce. So we have been working for a bit of time on a financial assistance policy, which I believe was discussed as a whole committee in terms of an important policy to develop, hopefully in service of next year. Just to make clear, we have not had a district-wide financial assistance policy overall. However, that doesn't mean that financial assistance has not been a part of our culture and our practice for many years. At different schools and for different programs, there has always been an effort in the intention of trying to make accessibility a priority for all families, regardless of financial stability or ability. However, I do think, not just me, but we all think that there probably is benefit for a variety of reasons of developing a district-wide consistent practice. First and foremost, just to try and establish for everyone a certain approach to where and when we want to make sure that there's a priority that's given to financial assistance, as well as the metric, just to make sure that there's consistency. And so I think that's one goal, is to develop consistency of practice and how we approach it, but to also just be mindful and support schools knowing that there are different areas of activity that I think we need to prioritize. I think if we lived in a world where funding was unlimited, we would want to make everything available to everyone regardless. That being said, we have to be somewhat pragmatic and realistic that that is not in fact the case, and so we need to make sure that we prioritize the things that are core, essential parts of our obligation to students in terms of programming. And so I think that's what we've tried, at least in this first read. And so what you'll see is certainly a listing of the areas and the categories where this financial assistance policy applies and where it may not. And then the second part is the actual metric that we are proposing. First and foremost, any family that is eligible for free and reduced lunch is immediately and automatically eligible for full assistance. And then in addition to that, what we've duplicated from many other districts is the use of the federal poverty guideline and creating a metric based on that threshold, where if you have an income relative to that, whether it's 2 times the poverty guideline, 2.5, 3 times, then there is a certain amount of a reduction in terms of the related fee. So that's the second part of the proposal. Attached to this, which is not in here, is certainly a procedure. And so the procedure is also going to be centralized, where we're going to enlist the assistance of Sheri in the business office, and certainly my office can support in trying to make sure that there's also consistency of trying to organize the process and working with families on that. And just to offer some assurances, because I think it's a fair question that was asked, is to be sure, families that have what we would consider traditional financial documents like tax returns and things like that, pretty straightforward. That being said, we also know that we live in a world where, certainly for families where they may be seeking assistance, that may not be as straightforward. So we know that there's families who are part of gig economies and other means of income that's not as straightforward. Rest assured, our procedure would take that into account and make sure that we'd work with families to say, how do we identify sort of the need with the resources in the materials that you have? So I certainly want to, while we're not covering those procedure pieces, I certainly want to highlight that, because I can appreciate that may be a question that comes to all of you. Finally, I do want to mention that there was a separate section for extended day childcare, where their procedures for extended day childcare is going to remain the same but be codified, where it is going to remain focused on eligibility based on free and reduced eligibility. That certainly is because they are self-funded, and right now, I actually just spoke to Aaron Betez at the end. Right now, at this point, they have, just with that metric, have provided $200,000 in financial assistance. So I think at a certain point, if we created a broader scope of eligibility, you'd actually have more families who potentially are currently eligible who would not necessarily have access, because once the pot runs out, it runs out. And so I think we wanted to maintain a priority of the families in our community who currently are the most in need. So at that point, I'll stop and let people offer questions, comments, suggestions for our committee to take back if there's language or elements that they would like us to consider or take a closer look at. Thank you.
And while people think about that, I have a question regarding sort of timeline. So we're a bit out of cycle, and the goal would be at our next meeting on the 22nd to vote this. Is that correct?
I think certainly, first and foremost, by the end of this year, yes, so we can apply it to next year. That is my hope. I think depending on the scope of the feedback that we get today, that would be a great aspiration. So assuming that people aren't going to say, hey, we need to do a wholesale re-envisioning, I'd like to think that our next school committee meeting, we could come back with something.
And just for clarity, I think one of the reasons we want to do that is we've had a number of kindergarten families who've expressed an interest in receiving some financial assistance,
right,
and we want to be able to give them direction as soon as possible.
Thank you. All right, questions, comments, feedback? Yanshen.
I have a question, but I'm not sure this falls into policy or this is procedures / implementation. Because I think last week we had a discussion at the policy set that where we talked about how does the district collect the data of the poverty, like family who, it is kind of a scary time. Like when you hear people talking about you have to take pictures of your passports, you're afraid of your parking tickets. I just want to know, can people safely apply for financial assistance from us and know that their information data will not be accessible by anyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's sort of adjacent to that point I was making about trying to offer sort of assurances that families who feel that they would like to apply can do so comfortably and confidently. I think first and foremost, the fact that we're centralizing it, I'd like to think, and I could be wrong, that hopefully that offers some assurances that the data is not sort of floating in these different areas, but it's actually centralized. Two, I think to your point, I think when we create sort of more communication, whether it's on our website or other ways of reaching out to families, offering sort of assurances of confidentiality, but also that if there are questions or thoughts about the type of documentation that is useful, that we're happy to have sort of individual conversations about what resources they can sort of provide us to meet sort of that application piece. So I think some of it is in the communication with families. Peter.
I would also add, similar to our approach with immigration, we don't share student and family information with law enforcement or other government agencies, absent, either the person's consent to do so or a judicial warrant.
And they can't force you to surrender those data either, right? For now.
Well, that would be a judicial
warrant.
Sort
of a judicial warrant.
Or some kind of a judicial order, and that could happen now the same way. So, yeah, I mean, I think, we have pretty tight guidelines on how we share information.
Judicial warrant, how easy is it to get? Can the ICE agents get this? Any agency could get a judicial warrant. It's a significantly higher standard than what a lot of agencies use as kind of an administrative warrant. So I think a lot of what we heard around immigration was there were administrative warrants issued by administration at Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, whereas a judicial warrant, the agency actually has to petition a judge to issue the warrant, and then the judge makes the decision about how to move forward with that. So it's a significantly higher standard than an agency-issued warrant. Okay. Just a quick follow. Do we know of abuse of that process anywhere?
We've had no experience with it, so I couldn't tell you if it's, abused or not. I think, I do know that it's the same standard that we would have to have regardless of year, federal administration, or anything else. If we get a judicial warrant on anything, we are absolutely required to comply, and there's no leeway for us.
I'll just pause here and remind the school committee that we in fact got an email today about a session, a community forum on immigration policy protection and local impact, hosted by Dan Sena and an immigration attorney. So that information came to our inbox about a session, and that could be a good forum and more informative. Yep, that's May 21st at 7 p.m. in Acton Town Hall. Questions back on the policy?
This is still kind of following the same vein, because it's true there's like a judicial warrant or other things, and ICE will sometimes come and put things and make it seem as if they're actually a judicial warrant when they're not. But it's important for the people who are presented with these things that they have a source to go to, like, do they have legal counsel within, the school district, say, hold on, no contact, so they can verify this is in fact a judicial warrant and nothing else before they start, providing data. I think that's an important thing. Is that being worked on?
Yeah, so I don't want to go too far off topic because we don't have any kind of immigration thing on our agenda, but insofar as we ever got a judicial warrant related to anything, the only people authorized to actually look at that, ultimately if a staff member gets it, it has to go through the principal directly to me, and then I actually send it to our attorneys to review, and then the attorney provides me guidance about what we need to do as next steps. So there's, and we wanted to give very clear guidance to all of our staff that they don't have to do anything. The only thing they have to do is get it to me, and then I work with the attorney.
Liz.
I had a couple things that I wanted to note on this policy. I echo Andrew's sentiment that I really wish that we could put a lot more things on here, but the pool is only so big, and my fear of adding any additional items that are currently on the not applicable list is actually unintentionally removing support that some of our families have already been experiencing. I still support this language for now, but another concern that I do have is if the federal definition of the poverty level changes, that could drastically change the eligibility for some of our families. So just to sort of put that in the back of our mind, that it could be that there are changes that come up that we need to review this again. But I think that given the information that we have now, it's best to move forward with what we do know. And then my other piece was actually for more Peter and Andrew. So when we do have this policy and then it's communicated to like whoever would be handling these processes, if we could also make sure that like the other available scholarships that we know about, like Peter, you mentioned the summer camp scholarships earlier today, just making sure that, our families, if they're coming to us with the need, we're saying, here's, as far as we can go, but here's all the other options
venues
you have.
Yep.
We're probably already doing that, but just voicing it.
Yeah, that's very logical.
On the policy? Okay.
So just regarding what you're saying about the poverty level, I think maybe we could rewrite it to use the current definition of what the poverty level is currently and use that as the language rather than, the de facto federal level, right? So we use the actual equation rather than the reference to the federal one. That would sort of circumnavigate that issue.
Wouldn't that then require us to revote it every year that the poverty level gets
Not necessarily, because it's the same formula that's being used. The fear is that the formula itself is going to change, and that would drastically change it. But if we're using the formula as it stands today, that's not something we would have to revote necessarily.
Other comments? Glenn?
One thought I had is that a concern I had is that there might be families that maybe don't speak English at home that just aren't aware of this pool of money. Is the outreach on this available in multiple languages? I'm just thinking of families that might not be watching that could find this useful.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Glenn. Thank you for asking. The answer is yes, and what I'll say further is we certainly plan on, not solely, but certainly including our website. And our website, as long as we put the text in the website body, is immediately translatable. In addition to that, through Parent Square, which I would imagine we will plan on sort of articulating to all families, Parent Square automatically translates to the chosen language of the recipient. So those are just two examples, but your point's very well taken in terms of making sure that we expand and broaden the awareness of this resource and this practice.
I'd also add all of our counselors and in particular multilingual educators and some of our other staff are also very well aware of the need for translation to families, as well as our great initial points of contact when they learn of a family who might be in need. And so they actually have the resources to be able to provide a translated version of anything to those families.
Okay. So one thing that any member of the committee can do, and in fact any member of the public who has access to this information, which you do because it's a public record and public documents, is send your feedback directly back to the policy subcommittee. So the policy subcommittee is meeting again next Friday. So please, well in advance of next Friday, send your comments. I will share with you all that I created a very highly edited version of this with lots of arrows and pointers and stuff with my feedback and sent that already. Because we're on a bit of a timeline, because we want to tell our kindergarten families what funds may be available to them, I would like to make sure that we get this before the committee before the end of this year and as soon as possible. So if you do have feedback, please send that to Andrew and Liz so that on next Friday, when that subcommittee meets again, they can discuss it, they can revamp the policy language, and they can put it in the packet that very same day, which is then ready for us to go for the following week when we meet and hopefully can vote on this. So please do take a look and provide your feedback to that team. All right. We are moving on to our ongoing business. First item is the end-of-year district goals update. So I think I spoke to both Lisa and Glenn today and gave them the wonderful news that you are not required to provide an evaluation of the superintendent after being on the school committee for a whopping 30 days, if that. But the rest of us, including those who are absent this evening and those of us who left the committee last meeting, do have to provide a fairly detailed evaluation of the superintendent with a very structured rubric provided by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So Peter is going to go through the goals that we were presented to us at the beginning of the year and talk about his progress on those. And this will be very important information as we prepare our evaluations of the superintendent this year. Take it away, Peter.
All right, so there's a memo in your packet, as well as the actual detailed end-of-year district goals report, in which you can actually track the goals from the beginning of the year through mid-year progress to kind of end-of-the-year status. I will say, it can be helpful to read the definitions at the beginning of the end-of-year goals report, because they do change from mid-year to end of year. If a goal is marked completed, that means that all of the action steps for that goal are done. If a goal is marked as ongoing for its final status, that means it's actually intended to be a multi-year goal. And even though we completed the action steps, we know that the work continues into the future. So just that is a bit of a nuance that can take some getting used to, so I wanted to highlight that. I'm not going to go through every goal tonight because we would be here for the next 3 hours, but what I do want to just share are some kind of highlights of this work. As we talked about earlier this year, one of the goals that we had, kind of overarching strategies we had for the year, was to really think about partnering with key stakeholders in moving some of the work that we wanted forward. And so a lot of what you're going to hear tonight, I'm just picking selected items, but this is actually really the work of our educators, our support staff, school leaders, our central office leaders, school committee members, families, and different community members, all coming together to try and move some of the work forward. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone, and I say this every year. Everything good that you hear that goes on in the district is a result of the work of our staff and community, and all of the problems are usually my fault. But seriously, it really takes a whole community to support our students' continued growth. In terms of engagement, this was one of the goals that I had going into the year as a personal goal, and it also wove through different district goals that we had. And one thing was expanding the voices who were sitting at the table as we were making decisions. And so I know the text is pretty small there, but if you recall from the fall, I talked about piloting a new engagement kind of way of creating stakeholder groups, piloted on a book called The Open System. And we essentially, when we created a number of the different task forces and committees we created, we thought of 3 different stakeholder groups. One stakeholder group being essential stakeholders, and those were individuals that need to be at that table in order for an initiative to be effective. A second stakeholder group were interested individuals, where we opened up applications to people who would want to participate. And whenever we could, we also created a rubric so that people who were applying could think transparently about the types of voices that we were looking for at the table and how they might fit in that process. And then the third group that really helped us expand some of the representation throughout the community was thinking in terms of a random group. When we actually started to randomly select individuals from all across the district using kind of a random number generator that I programmed into a spreadsheet. And we would actually randomly select individuals and then invite them to participate on different task forces and committees. And that yielded some really cool, interesting results. And we actually got some people coming to the table who had never been there before and even said, I didn't actually think that I'd be on one of these groups, but now that I'm here, it's kind of really an interesting process. So I see us continuing that work in different ways as we move forward. The other kind of overarching piece of this was using a new technology platform called Thought Exchange that has different ways that people can engage in giving us feedback, but also it has a pretty powerful AI engine behind it to really help with the data analysis. And that allowed us to actually, collect more subjective data and really kind of let people tell us what they were thinking in their own words. And then, knowing that we don't have, our data analysis team in this district is a staff of 0. And that means that we're all just doing the work ourselves. But being able to use an AI tool to really look for trends and patterns and pull that out allowed us to capture a much more authentic voice when we were going out and getting feedback from people. So some different groups that we wanted to engage with this year. We created an educator roundtable, which brought together educators from across the district to give us feedback about their experiences and what was going on in schools. We created a student advisory and brought in our school committee student reps along with an expanded group of students that both applied and were randomly selected from across the district to talk about issues that were important to them. We ended up kind of focusing on 2 areas. One was the role of the school committee representative, and if you followed us through the year, our school committee reps used to stand at the mic and give updates. We invited them to sit at the table as a result of some feedback from them. We also got them an AB Schools email address for the student reps to the school committee so that when they're communicating out with the student body at the high school and junior high, they have an easier way, kind of like the school committee shell for our student representatives. And those were 2 of the top items of feedback we got from them. We also had another group of students focused on how can we better get information from the administration to our student body at both the junior and senior high schools. They gave us some feedback around that. We were actually able to compile kind of some frequently asked questions based on what students wanted to hear, and those will be in place as we go into next year. So really nice opportunity to work directly with kids. We had an elementary budget task force. A lot of you already know about the work of that, but that included a very broad range of stakeholders that made some recommendations into the budget process, and it was probably the first time we ever actually opened up the budget process to a wide range of stakeholders to think about how we were going to move forward. So had that. We also engaged many people in the thousands of people through the Vision of a Graduate work, which will be coming to you before the end of this year. We have done, community surveys, we have done workshops, stakeholder groups, and we're excited to bring the Vision of a Graduate forward at the end of this school year. And then we also engage with a really broad range of stakeholders through the Chronic Absenteeism Task Force, both on the task force itself and also from reaching out through surveys and thought exchanges to gather feedback on how to best support families in addressing chronic absenteeism. We also did a lot of work around equity, access, and outcomes, and I just want to highlight a couple of things for you. One, we launched a new data visualization platform called Forefront, and so right now. Let's not cross that off the list right now. I appreciate the forward thinking of the software. But we did launch a new data visualization platform, and that was piloted with 2 grade levels at each school who will now be the leaders for our faculty to be able to use this. That really allows teachers in a much more visual way to dig into student learning data across all types of student learning in the school. So we're excited about that. And then we also implemented our first ever pre-K through 12 curriculum in second step, which was a social emotional curriculum and bullying prevention program. We found out through a bullying program review that also was a community outreach portion that we did not have an evidence-based bullying, anti-bullying curriculum in place in the district. So this was an important component of that, as well as really thinking about skills that students can develop systemically in that social emotional realm as they progress from pre-K all the way through high school. So this was a really successful launch. We've received a lot of positive feedback from our educators around the curriculum. We, in the first year, actually, as of May, got about almost 80% of the full curriculum, K-6, done, which is a very high percentage for a first year of implementation. And all of our bullying prevention lessons, particularly in grades 7 and 8, which is a critical time for that, all of the bullying prevention lessons were completed this year. So that's also some really good news. Chronic Absenteeism Task Force, I already talked a little bit about it from an engagement standpoint, but a huge credit to Heather Stauk, our coordinator for SEL and mental and behavioral health, and Jen Faber, our director for DEI. They facilitated 2 full-day workshops with their steering committee that included educators, administrators, and families together. They had developed some consistent protocols from kindergarten all the way through high school that we piloted for working through absenteeism and making sure we were engaging with families in consistent ways across all of our schools. And by June of this year, they'll be finalizing their list of recommendations from their task force to be able to start implementing next year, and probably beginning of next year we'll be able to share more with you because it's going to take some time to create the documents and everything else. We also completed a multilingual learner program review. We talked about that with you during the budget process and shared the results of that. I'm not going to go into depth on that, but really highlighted some work that we want to be doing over the next several years around curriculum development, professional learning, service delivery models, but also in staffing levels. We did not add multilingual educators to the budget this year because of budget constraints, but we probably should be adding about 3 ML educators in order to meet the service delivery minutes that we want for that population of students. We are understaffed at this point, and so that's going to be important. We did share this program review with District Management Group as one of the many foundational documents that we gave them in order to be thinking strategically about the next 5 years. And then at the high school, you already heard from Joanie, so I'm not going to talk about this for a long time. But one of the pieces to go along with the work around kind of re-leveling the high school, it's not de-leveling it, it's re-leveling it, is to think about establishing consistent curriculum document format so that as we're thinking about developing curriculum and thinking about really key ways about how we support students, those become embedded in curriculum documents, and it's not something that if a new teacher comes into the school, they're unsure of anymore, but it actually becomes part of the history of that school so that new educators and veteran educators alike can access good information about best supporting kids and the scope and sequence in all of our courses in a consistent format. So a lot of kudos to Gabby. The whole high school leadership team has been involved in this just to get to a place where we have a consistent format. That's a big deal in high schools to be able to get to that stage. So kudos to that group. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, but as I said, this was just highlights.
Thanks, Peter. Questions? Yeah.
I just want to say how much I appreciated the rebranding of de-leveling to re-leveling. I noticed it when Joanie was presenting too, and I was like, I like that.
I have a question about the artwork on this first slide. Is that a high school student's artwork?
That is one of our high school students. I believe this is Ashley Gu.
It is, right?
I believe it is. And I'm saying that because I was just at the senior art show tonight before school committee.
That one wasn't there, but it seemed to the same.
And kind of the imagery is a common theme in a lot of her work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Very, very, very powerful artwork. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, feedback for Peter? So there's lots of content that's been given to you here. School committee will get an email from Julie tomorrow with the rubric sort of pre-filled out because there are some parts and pieces that Peter was focusing on, so that as you fill out the rubric, some of the stuff is already there for you so you know what you're evaluating him on. And then the very important thing is when I need this back, because one of the wonderful benefits of being the chair is I get to take all of your evaluations and create a summary. So that's, your evaluations will be due to me by May 23rd. So you'll have 2 weeks from tomorrow when you receive the content from Julie to work on your evaluations and send them back to me. And when you do return them, please send them to both me and Julie Lalumiere so that we can capture all of that information. I will then work on collating all of that information and creating a summary, which, as some of you might remember, then gets read aloud at the last meeting of our year when we read the evaluation of the superintendent. So thank you for all the information, Peter. And now it's up to us. I also just want to publicly request anybody from the community is also welcome to send any feedback about the superintendent to me and Julie Lalumiere so that we can incorporate that feedback as well. Lakshmi.
Can we get all that information that Peter presented today? I don't think they're in the
slides, yes.
Yeah. I think that the other document is really dry. It's much better to start with this.
For those of us who are visual learners, this was much better. Yeah. All right. Glenn, did you have a question?
Yes, very briefly. In the chronic absenteeism task force report, you said that'd be out in June. Was that correct? Sure. The chronic absenteeism task force, you said there'd be more information available in June. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they worked all year long, engaging with stakeholders. They did focus groups with families. They did surveys, and also did a lot of research around best practices across the country in addressing absenteeism. They've taken all of those as in a task force. They're forming a series of recommendations out of them. The recommendations will be complete by the end of June so that we can begin implementing them, but the documents probably won't be ready until next fall.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I would like to invite Sheri up to give us the, what are we at? Third quarter financial report. Hi.
How'd you say to work this thing?
If the button on the side is red, push it to make it green.
There's. Yep, got it. Okay. And is this coming right from Beautiful AI? Because I just noticed a mistake and I fixed it in Beautiful AI. So I want to let you guys know that when we get to this first slide, it's not. It's still the same.
Probably hasn't been refreshed.
Okay.
Nothing like advanced collaboration tools. Is it correct
Look,
now?
it is correct now. Look
Great.
at that.
I I don't know what changed, but I'm glad you're.
Well, I'm going to tell you what the change is. So from the packet that you've received in the report, I did just change the bottom line because the FY26 preliminary budget had the number that we had on it on Budget Saturday. So I had 3.97% when it's really 3.95. I just had to change what the budget was. So I did. 0.02%?
Yes. Awesome.
It's accurate, though. I am going to look at my notes, so you all got the report, and I'm sure it was a little bit surprising report than what we would normally report out on a third quarter. Things have kind of gone our way a little bit at the end of the year in our revenue side. So I'll talk about where the revenue is coming from before we kind of get to this slide. So as you know, Chapter 70 this year, when we budgeted it back last June, we didn't have all of the numbers. So we're anticipating an extra $367,000 just from Chapter 70. And by the end of May, we are supposed to be receiving an IRS rebate check in the amount of $2.75 million for the geothermal well system at the Boardwalk campus. We did get an official letter from the Treasury saying that we reported everything, we've sent everything properly, that they actually screwed up on their end, and they're supposed to be sending us a check, they said within 6 weeks, which would be by the end of May. So we're just hoping and waiting for that. And in addition, and I'm sure that Andrew's probably going to tell you this too, next Wednesday, we're going to be getting our check. We had our health insurance trust meeting this morning, and we're going to be getting a check for $619,600. And the way that DESE has told us we have to handle that, because we made the expense in FY25, we have to do a journal entry to credit our expense. And what that means is we will debit the cash. It won't be in a separate revenue account, but it will just reduce the expenditure that we have in our expenditure report, and we'll leave that money on the bottom line at the end of the year. So it will still flow to E&D. It's just going to look a little different. It's not going to be in a separate revenue account. We already have received an energy rebate from NSTAR for $184,000, and that was for the Boardwalk campus exceeding its energy performance. And then finally, our investment income surplus is projected to be about $395,000 over what we budgeted. So keeping that in mind, and then looking at this slide, our E&D was certified probably back in November for $2.1 million, and that was effective for July 1st. So you take that 2.11 million and you add in our additional revenue of the 4.36 million, and you carry forward any expense surplus that we have of about 141,000. And that carry forward number is funding that was encumbered in FY24 and either closed out for a lesser amount or it was unused. It was money that we had encumbered and we didn't use. So that leaves us with a very large balance. My recommendation is we knew that we wanted to take that 2.75 million and we kind of wanted to put it over into a capital CIP revolving fund. So we can only move what has been certified. So my recommendation is once we have that check, when it comes in, that we vote in a June meeting to move 2 million of that funding over to the CIP revolving fund so we don't have to worry about hitting that 5% limit that we have. If we do that, and if we closed out to exactly what I said, then that would leave us about 3.95 in our E&D. Now, I do know that there's differences there. I do know that there's a possibility that we would have more money on the bottom line of our expenses. So this just kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room so we don't have to worry about that 5%. And one of my other recommendations, which you'll see in a second when I go to the next slide. Well, this is just our E&D. This is the 5-year E&D. This did not change from the second quarter. This just shows you there's our 2.1 that we had on July 1st, and we did use almost 1.7 to offset. Just a reminder, we are not offsetting our FY26 budget with any E&D funding, so that's why this slide has not changed at all. The only thing you'll see in here, and it probably won't be until November when we get our number certified, that will be in the blue for the next one. This is what I think has changed. Our circuit breaker. So right now the state has said that they are going to give us extra transportation. They originally had budgeted, well, 44%, and they're saying they're going to give us 75% for this year. If they do that, that will be an extra $396,000. That does not go through the general fund. That goes directly to the circuit breaker account. And the circuit breaker rules are you can only carry over what you've been given in a year. So by us having some of this extra money, I want to kind of stick to our goal of trying to build up our reserves. So from the second quarter to at least here, I have recommended that we don't make our final transfer when the circuit breaker money comes in for the fourth quarter. And we also look at the expenses that we've had, and depending upon where we are near the end of the year, possibly do a journal entry to redefine those expenses and build up our reserves more. So for FY26 right now, we're earmarked to have 3.7 million of circuit breaker used for out-of-district tuitions. The next two slides are basically just kind of going over the admin codes. In your report, I did the character codes, which is a little more detailed. This is just a summary of where we are as of March 31st. On the first page, you're going to see the fringe, the health insurance. It does say 3.2 million, but the final 3 months are not encumbered. So March, April, actually 4 months. March, April, May, and June, because the March bills don't really come in till the second week in April. Those have not been paid yet. However, we do still have probably a little over 2 million, and some of that's the contingency, and some of that is the savings we did from the opt-out. The opt-out savings, where we pay the money for the opt-out, has to come out of the salary accounts, so all the extra health insurance money lied in those account numbers. And this is just the second page of it, kind of going over the rest of the accounts. Our sped transportation, that is where our McKinney-Vento is and our foster care is. You can see that that line is over. We have had a great deal of McKinney-Vento. especially since our shelter closed. We have to, wherever those students have gone, we have to split the transportation with the other districts. So that's for, May and June, we'll have to incur those costs. But as of right now, we've used about 95% of our overall budget at 110 million. Even though it does say 6 million there, just keep in mind, we don't have everything encumbered. So I know that that number looks higher than in reality what it's going to be. And then the final page, this is just our revolving accounts, and it just kind of tells you, the light blue gives you where we kind of stood. Those are our top 7 accounts. Light blue tells you where we started at July 1st. And the red tells you what we've taken in revenue. The kind of lime green is where we are in expenses. Then we have our munis balance as of the 3/31, which is the light blue. And again, these are the couple things that we're looking at and that we can possibly look into, given the financial policy and the fact that Peter said that we have already had families reach out to look at kindergarten. Maybe we could also look to build up some of that kindergarten reserve so we have some extra money and charge back some of the expenses that we've charged to the revolving back to the general fund to possibly give us a little bit of cushion for the families that might need the help. That's kind of it.
So, a couple of things to highlight. One, advocacy is paying off. We had a tremendous outpouring of advocacy from school committee members, administration, staff, community members, families at the state level, and that paid off in a couple of ways. One is the supplemental budget that came out provided additional circuit breaker money for us for the current school year, FY25, and some additional regional transportation money as well. We're just waiting for the actual numbers to come in to us. We don't have exact numbers yet, but that will help us, and that is unanticipated revenue. And then in FY26, it looks as though Chapter 70 will be funded at 150. Both the Senate and the House did that. Regional transportation is up. I will say circuit breaker is up for FY26. So all of the points of advocacy that we've been sending out as a community were addressed in this budget. However, they are not going to look at that Chapter 70 formula as a long-term. House leadership has indicated publicly they are not in support of looking at the Chapter 70 formula this year. I did talk to Senator Eldridge because the House version of the budget and the Senate version of the budget were different, and the Senate was lower than the House version in some key areas, so I wanted to find out what happened. What he said is that it's actually very common that the Senate and House come out with different budgets, and then there's a reconciliation process. The two chambers intentionally fund programs differently because each understands that they have different priorities. So for example, like mental health is a key Senate priority and has been for a long time. So because the House knows that, they might fund mental health at a lower rate than they know the Senate is going to, because historically what happens during reconciliation is the higher of all the numbers is the reconciled version of the budget. So based on that, what we could read into the tea leaves is that if you look at the Senate version and the House version, whatever the higher number of both versions is likely to be what we're getting. So that could be some really good positive news to the tune of several $100,000 for next year. And it's also several $100,000 for the current year. We just can't expect it in the current year, but it's coming. Second key thing is around kind of the IRS tax credit and the rebate from Eversource. Those are both Boardwalk campus related projects. We've known about them for some time, but the date that we would receive them would have been between 2 years ago and never. So sometime in that time frame, we did not receive confirmation from the IRS that we were actually getting it until very, very recently. So that's certainly not money that can be counted on. We have significant capital liabilities ahead of us, particularly around the high school rooftop project. That is probably a $4 million plus project, even after engineering. We want to use those. Okay. Sounds like someone picked up a phone and is doing something. I don't know. Andrew, do you mind seeing if you can figure that out? I have no idea. So essentially what we want to do is be able to use the funding from the IRS tax credit and that rebate to put into capital to really offset that high school project, because we are in a position where we might be able to knock off a really multi-million-dollar piece of capital without having to go back to the taxpayers for more money to do it. So that's a goal that we have there. And then, you know, in terms of reserves and the impact of a lot of these different revenues on reserves, it is increasingly looking like at the end of all of this, both our special education reserve as well as our excess and deficiency may be able to actually bounce back to pre-pandemic levels. So in addition to trying to manage kind of the annual budget challenges that are expected to persist, we may be able to take off the table that threat of a fiscal cliff where reserves are depleted. Because last year, if you remember, we had planned not to use any excess and deficiency money in FY25, and because the health insurance trust blew up on us, we ended up having to actually use more than we've ever used, to the tune of almost $1.7 million. That money really needs to get rebuilt, because you don't know what can happen in future years. We don't know what funding at the federal level is going to look like moving forward. And we're in a much safer position financially, being able to get those reserves back to the baseline as quickly as possible. So that is some really good financial news for the district. It doesn't solve the out years of our budget, but it certainly gets us in a much safer position for the future.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Sheri. Questions? Glenn has a question.
In the pool of revenue was from stock market dividends, right? I think.
Yeah, they were from our investment income.
Yeah. How exposed are we to stock market volatility? Because
It's all in our is it MMD? Is that what it's called? I think it's our MMD account. I don't believe it's stock-based. I believe it's in our savings accounts that we have with their federal savings.
Yeah, there's a portfolio for municipalities that we keep that's not just traditional stock market. It's a more conservative approach to that, but the revenues that we have, we can actually count on at this point, because the stock market and all of the other portfolios that go with it outperformed expectations for, the first, 3 quarters of our fiscal year. That has slowed somewhat in recent times, but it's not negatively going to impact us.
I have 2 questions. Well, a question and a comment. One is, when we're looking at the additional revenues that you've showed us in this memo, that doesn't include what we're expecting to see from the supplemental budget from the state for circuit breaker transportation, or does that include the additional funds from those?
It doesn't include either. Circuit breaker, you're not going to see from the revenue side. It's going to go into a circuit breaker account. But I did not include the transportation, because I don't trust anything until I see it.
Okay, so I mean, I guess the point I'm getting at is that there's probably another, or potentially another, $300K
That's
of
correct.
revenue. Okay. A comment, when we look through those character codes, we overspent on our utilities line by $370,000. And I know we've talked about this a bit beforehand. I would love us to look into how to make that a little bit more measurable and understand where that excess is coming from. And I know we've talked about some of the challenges we have physically around measuring that, but I think that there's probably an investment of $100,000 that could help us save the $370,000 or something like that. So maybe something to look at under the capital side, because
Yep, and we have also locked into some pricing. We've already locked in the pricing that we locked into is actually lower pricing than we're paying right now. And that's going to start in December.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And then lastly, I'm just going to echo what both Sheri and Peter said. We're seeing significant additional revenue this year, not because we underspent and not because we didn't plan well, but because of great advocacy work over years when it comes to the Boardwalk campus and those refunds, and when it comes to the advocacy that we've done just in this year with our state legislators. So I want to thank everyone who participated in that, from folks who are filling out reimbursement forms for Boardwalk through to every educator and every community member and school committee member who sent something over to our legislators to help them understand the challenge that we're in. We're still not in a great place. What we've been able to do is rebuild, to Sheri and Peter's point, rebuild our reserves to pre-pandemic levels. Most of that money, though, is not year-over-year money, and it will not solve the problem that we're still up against when we look at our budget challenges with regards to future years and out years. So,
just one more thank you. You know, there was a period of time where we expected to have received that federal tax credit from the IRS, but had not. And just a huge thank you to Senator Markey's office, because we engaged with them and their legal staff to really work directly with the IRS to track down the status of that. So, you know, the fact that that's coming through and is moving forward, you know, is a testament to a lot of work behind the scenes.
I look forward to the big cardboard check.
I look forward to getting it for you.
Thank you, Sheri.
Just one quick note on that, just to add a little bit of color so that we maybe don't like full panic. I have had a lot of clients that both tax payments and refunds were like a month late, and I still have ongoing like April 15th payments that like they still haven't cashed the check. So they have been moving slow, and then I'm seeing things slowly like start to fall off.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next bit of ongoing business, which is really, I think it's a third read now, of policy JK, which is our student discipline guidelines. So thank you to everyone who provided feedback to the policy subcommittee. Policy subcommittee revisited that, made some edits to the policy, and it's back to us for a vote. Do you or Andrew want to highlight what the changes were?
Andrew actually did a great job of highlighting them in the actual policy. If you do click on that link, you know, sort of removing the language about the restorative exercise altogether in that. Really, we focused on the language that was around the right to recess because we really wanted to find a way to include that in, and made it a little bit more clear that the reason for the right to recess is in accordance with our wellness policy. So we've got a link in there, and you know, made it a little bit more clear that in any cases where, you know, recess would be fully restricted, this would only be something that an administrator could take care of. It's not something that the teacher would have full authority to do. And I do want to thank Amanda Bailey and Tori for coming and helping us, you know, really take another look at this last week.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments or feedback on this, or anybody wish to make a motion? Sir?
Real quick, I still think restricting recess is a giant hammer. I think my concern is that with this hammer, it's that you have a tool that's really powerful, and it may become the only tool that's used. But setting standards, procedures, constraints around the administration's assistance with student behavior is a good thing, and I'm glad to see that some of the constraints placed around the removing recess were added to this, and I'm glad to see that we're limiting the use of this hammer. I just think it's something we owe our students and our staff to provide a better environment for our students. We need to ensure that we're modeling the respect we expect from our students by rarely restricting recess and offering other escalating levels of support. What I liked about the changes, what I liked about the way that you approached this, was that it's not just bam, go to this. It is that there's a space in between. I would hope that additional guidance is provided to the administration, and I like the way of communicating with the parents so that everybody in the exchange knows what to expect. So thank you for that.
Tori?
I think one of the things that was helpful to me was, you know, having Patricia here to talk about examples. I still find that, you know, as you look at policies, they have to be written so broadly and so in such general language that sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what the nuance of that was. And one of the things that I appreciated about the discussion was, there might be some, in implementation of policy, some discussion about like, what does this actually mean? And how do you communicate that to everybody so that they understand it? I think definitions are really important, and especially as we start talking about restorative justice, I feel like that is a term that is not universally understood to mean the same thing by everybody in our community.
Sure.
I would like to move to approve the discipline policy JK, I don't know where to, JK? Yep. Great, as provided in our PIP.
Second.
Okay, so Liz made the motion and Yanshin seconded it. We'll pause for a moment here. Any last discussion? There's a motion on the table. There's no discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you all very much. Congratulations to Glenn and Lisa on your first vote. All right, we're going to move on to subcommittee and member reports. Anything on policy that we haven't already discussed this evening?
Nope.
Love it. And I'm glad to say, well, first of all, I'm sorry to say that Becca is no longer the chair of the budget subcommittee, and I will be standing in as chair for, I don't think we have any other meetings planned for this year, maybe one. I will just remind both Tori and Andrew and myself that as the remaining members of the budget subcommittee, we are also the warrant signing committee, and we do need to have all three of us reply to those. We've been doing a great job of this year, so thank you for that. Budget sub did not meet on Monday, mostly because I forgot, and I think we were all disconnected, and we had town meeting, so we were already prepared. All right, so moving on. Liaison reports. You want to start with Health Insurance Trust?
I'd like to start with that.
Please do.
Because early this morning, Health Insurance Trust met in this very building, and we were happy to announce the trust will return about $800,000 to the town and the school, split according to their operating agreement, meaning the district will receive, as Sheri mentioned, $619,600, and the town will receive a check for $180,400. These checks will be issued this coming Wednesday, but sadly will not be the giant cardboard Price is Right style that we were expecting, but still the money's good. Currently, our Blue Cross Blue Shield Trust balance is about $645,000. All charges assessed to Blue Cross Blue Shield is paid out through that trust. Our recent bill was $1,900. The run out continues to wind that number down. Harvard Pilgrim is similarly working off of credits. Our next meeting will be the second week of June, but I do want to take a moment of thanks for the more years than anyone will admit. Timothy Harrison's CPA has been providing exceptional assistance and guidance in managing our funds. He and his team are retiring, and we will miss him and his brilliance. And as some of you may know, Teresa O'Leary is stepping down from her role in the town of Acton and is a member of the Health Insurance Trust as our treasurer. She has been an incredible partner and someone who made working through the intricacies of the healthcare industry a lot easier for everyone to understand. So I just wanted to thank Teresa and Tim for all of their help. Back to you.
Thank you very much. All right. Yeah. Who do we have? There was no ALG. I can brief on select board. So the last time the Boxborough Select Board met was on Monday, April 28th. And of note in that meeting, a member of the school committee, myself, shared the information with the select board about our healthcare stabilization fund. So that is something that will be coming to the school committee for a vote shortly, now that both the town of Acton and the town of Boxborough have voted to approve the creation of a healthcare stabilization fund. So I answered some questions for the select board there, and then most of the conversation was in preparation for Boxborough town meeting. And with that, I'll hand it over to Liz, and you can share what the topics were for BLF and Finance Committee.
Oh my God, I don't even remember BLF.
BLF was all about town meeting.
BLF was all about town meeting, which for Boxborough starts on Monday, May 12th. And I do want to highlight starts on because we are expecting a multi-day town meeting this year. And I just want to encourage, I know that it's very difficult for families to get out there. I have a very large babysitting bill coming my way. And any even if one voting member is able to attend town meeting, it really does make all the difference to be involved in our democracy.
And then I'll just remind school committee members that you are, of course, invited. If you are not interested in sitting through multiple hours of the special town meeting beforehand, but still want to come, do let me know, and I can text you and let you know when we're getting close to the school presentation, and let you know if we're not even going to get to that on the first night, and maybe postponing that till the second night. Yanshin, what do you have to report for us? Anything?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay,
The school budget passed in the town of Acton.
Thank you, yes.
It was so good.
Mike.
The presentation was amazing. It was really, really good.
Well, thank you to Tori and Becca and myself for putting that together. We knocked it out. I will also just report as the liaison who sat at the CPAC last night. Why can't I find that agenda? CPAC basically is beginning to wrap up for their end of year. They will be presenting to us on the 5th of June. Okay. Phew. And a really good discussion on some of the goals that the CPAC wants to work on for next year. CPAC meetings are, and I cannot believe it took me this long to really figure it out, CPAC meetings are the Wednesday night before school committee meetings, so that they can discuss and provide some feedback to us in advance of our meetings. So CPAC will be meeting again on the, I want to say 24th? The 4th of June. Thank you very much, Kristen. Anybody else have any liaison or committee meeting updates? Okay. Running back to my agenda, the next item is school committee goal update. So this is where I was going to share. Thank you very much to the town of Acton for voting to pass our budget. And I'm very appreciative for all the members of town meeting who were there. I'm very appreciative to the technical staff who took the presentation directly off my laptop because apparently the email did not go through. Might have been sent a little late, so I have confirmed 3 times now with the town of Boxborough that they have the presentation. We talked about Boxborough's town meeting. Boxborough's having Pfeiffer's Day, and so I'm looking at Yanshin and Liz and curious if we want to try and get a table at Pfeiffer's Day and arrange for some outreach at Pfeiffer's Day in Boxborough.
What day is it?
It is Saturday, June 21st.
Okay.
Normally it's on Father's Day
Yeah.
weekend, and this year it's a week later. Yeah, which threw me for a loop as well.
Saturday the 21st
Of June.
of June.
I'll
Okay.
put up a spreadsheet.
All right, so.
And I've already carved out the whole day, so I am happy to man that booth throughout the entire day.
Wonderful. So expect some communication from either Yanshin or Liz, looking for some folks to help set up that booth at Flair Fields and to sort of sit there during the day. Again, the goal, as always, of these is just to have our presence there, answer questions that folks have. If you happen to see one of our state legislators, thank them for their generosity, remind them that they're not done yet and there's still work to be done. Any other communication updates or outreach opportunities? Liz?
I don't know if you guys will be attending either Acton or Boxborough's Memorial Day parades, but just wanted to remind everyone that we do have that kind of like elevator pitch, and just have in the back of your mind in case you get any questions about sort of like what we're going to be doing. I want to really keep the organizational, and analysis that we're doing fresh in everybody's minds over the summer.
The elevator pitch draft is as Tori and crew wrote it. So if it's not shared with the committee as a whole, we'll make sure that we put it in our next packet. Did we have it in our last packet?
It was in the last packet,
Yep.
but I was just thinking it may also be helpful to send to new members so they have it directly too.
Yep. All right. Any other communication goal updates? I want to give everybody a heads up now. Our next meeting on May 22nd, we are starting with an executive session at 6:30. So I will send you an email reminder as well. But we do have an executive session planned for 6:30 prior to our 7 p.m. start. The meeting on the 22nd is a fairly packed meeting, so please make sure you do take a look at the packet, ask any questions, familiarize yourself with our reorganization process, because we will also be reorganizing our committee at that time. Peter, is there I'm missing the consent agenda. Yep, this is why I have an agenda in front of me. So, as a reminder, items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I'll read each item, and if a member would like it held, you just say hold. Members do not have to have attended a meeting to vote on the minutes. Item A, approval of ABRSC meeting minutes of 4/17/2025. Item B, recommendation to approve a $25,000 check for the 15th and final installment from Dragonfly Theater to ABRSD. Item C, recommendation to approve budget transfers for $7,983.66 per policy DBJ. And finally, approval of warrants as presented in our packet of 5/8/2025. Hearing nothing held, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Tori made the motion and Vikram seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you all very much. Now, Peter, is there anything in the FYI we want to highlight this evening?
Yeah, I'd particularly like to highlight the School Wellness Advisory Council's report. That is our wellness committee for the school district. I want to thank Kirsten Nelson and all of our members of that advisory who work throughout the year to continue to make sure that our schools are happy and healthy places for our kids. That is the final report of the committee. We provide the final report to you each year so you know what happened over the course of the school year.
Wonderful, thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
All right, so Tori moved to adjourn and Lisa seconded that. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, unanimous. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.